Welcome to RPG Archive. We're back with our Persona friend. We're playing a different game today. It's Alex from Turbo Zone.
Hi, I'm a professional game player.
You've also started a new podcast called Turbo Dojo. Can you tell us about it real quick?
It's me and my best friend Damon. Yeah.
That is kind of it, isn't it? Because it's less structured. It's just you guys having fun.
Yeah, it's just us chatting it up and stuff and sharing our life stories and everything else and whatever else we want to talk about. And it's karate themed for some reason.
Well, I did learn in the first episode that Damon is now officially a sensei.
Damon's he didn't tell me until we started recording. So I thought that was pretty fucking good. But yeah, so if you wanna hear me and Damon talk about stuff, we have one episode up right now, and we have some more coming. So thanks for the plug.
This is a great show. Excited for the future.
And if you like RPGs, check out RPG Archive.
Yeah, why don't you? If you're here, why don't you click the subscribe button? To hear more voice cracks, hit the subscribe button.
Hit the subscribe button.
And leave a comment below. And I hopefully you leave a comment because we have a great subject today. We're talking about Nier, or in my case, Nier Replicant.
Shit.
Well, hold on. Let me get it right. Let me get it 100% right.
Oh my god.
It's the game where I'm actually talking about is. Let me see where I can.
Yeah.
Nier Replicant version. Okay, and this doesn't even have the whole thing, I don't think, but 1.22474487139. I think it keeps going.
Repeated. It's 9 repeated. That's what the 3 dots are for. You know why it's called that?
No. Can you explain
that? That is the square root of 1.5.
Oh. And is it and I see. So it's like a 1 point, it's like a updated version. Oh, that's kind of clever. Okay. There you go. That's the reason for the overly long name. Yeah, I could probably clip that. That's awesome that we're starting out. I didn't even have that planned. All right. Are you ready to start talking about Nier Replicant?
Dude, I'm always ready to talk about Nier.
Okay. Well, before I like to go into these games, I like to start with the history and some of the backstory. I want to talk about the company Cavia. Is that how you pronounce it? Cavia?
I don't. I've always called it Cavia, so I don't know.
It was a Japanese video game developer. The company name was apparently, and this is according to the Wikipedia, an acronym for Computer Amusement Visualizer. Although the company website also claims it refers to caviar. So either one.
Delicious.
Just take your pick. One of those is accurate. It's best known for the Drakengard series and 2 Resident Evil rail shooters, the Umbrella Chronicles and the Dark Side Chronicles. On October 2005, the company's name was sold to AQ Interactive. In July 2010, the company was officially disbanded and absorbed into AQ Interactive. Cavia would henceforth stop developing games, with Nier, which it released in May 2010, being the last game developed by Cavia. Despite the closure, some members of the development staff from Nier, including director Yoko Taro, went on to produce a sequel to the Drakengard series, Drakengard 3, under Access Games and published by Square Enix. Former members of the development teams at Cavia have either gone freelance or joined other development teams within Marvelous AQL, Concept, Tango Gameworks, From Software, or rejoined the teams at Namco, where members of Cavia Inc. were originally from. Do you have any other? I know you said that you were a big fan of the Drakengard series. Can you kind of explain that series like in a nutshell, real quick? Because it does, in a way, tie into this game. So,
the Drakengard series is Yoko Taro's first baby. Well, at least the first game. He didn't have much involvement with the second one. And the third one came way later after Nier. So really, it's just the first game, which is kind of important to this game. It's like a hack and slash game with like flying elements, like you can fly a dragon around. It's pretty rough. The narrative's good. The gameplay is purposely kind of because you're not supposed to enjoy killing all these people, and that's kind of the point. That's just the start of Yoko Taro.
We're certainly gonna talk more about Yoko Taro. That's gonna be a big part of this discussion, so we'll save some of it for that. I did a little bit of research on it, and I can agree. It seems like he wants you to think that way when he had a big thing about killing, but we'll talk about that later. Do you have any other experience with these games? I know you're a big Resident Evil fan too. Did you play the Umbrella Chronicles?
Yeah, I have both of those. I have the Umbrella and the Dark Side Chronicles, and I've played those a bunch. I also played Bullet Witch. They made that right, Bullet Witch. It sucked. It was a cool idea, but it wasn't.
Yes, they did make Bullet Witch.
Yeah, it had some issues. But in terms of just like the games I really like by them, it's Drakengard, Nier, and the Resident Evil shooters.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's Cavia. They're no longer around, but they did. They made some big games in that Xbox 360, PS3 era. It looks like, and it looks like PS2 as well. So I probably would have completely missed them because I kind of wasn't into gaming at that time. But that's a shame. All right, let's talk about Yoko Taro now. I have his wiki up here, and again, I'm going out the Wikipedia. I'm going to let you freestyle some of this because I know you know more about him than I do. I did a little research on him. Very interesting dude. Actually, it'd be nice to hang out with him. He seems like a pretty cool guy. But I'm just going to throw out some facts, and we can start talking about him. Yoko Taro is a Japanese video game director, and scenario writer. Starting his career at the now-defunct game Cavia, his best-known work was on the action role-playing video game series Drakengard and its spin-offs, Nier and Nier Automata. I always can't say that word right.
I call it Automata, because I think Automata sounds stupid.
Okay, Automata. That's how you call it.
But you can say whatever if you want.
Yoko was born in Nagoya, Aichi, and studied at the Kobe Design University in the 1990s. Kobe. Not going to say any of those jokes. Anyway, while he did not initially intend to pursue a career in video games, after working at Namco and Sony, he joined Cavia and became the director and scenario writer for the first Drakengard game. He has since worked extensively on every game in the series except for Drakengard 2, and on mobile titles after becoming a freelance after Cavia's absorption into AQ Interactive. Critics have noted Yoko's unconventional game design and writing style. One of the main aspects of his work is exploring the darker aspects of people, such as why they are driven to kill each other, although he typically does not share a common opinion on the story's dark natures. His writing technique, described as backward script writing, involves outlining the ending of the story first and building the narrative backward from that point. Due to his disdain for being photographed, he generally wears a mask when giving interviews or presenting games. And of course, that mask he's wearing is from the game we're talking about, Nier. So clearly, you kind of warmed me up to this guy in the preparation for playing this. What's your history with Yoko Taro, and what's some of your thoughts on him?
Well, Nier was the first Yoko Taro game I ever played. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. It just looked like a fun hack and slashy type game. And after playing through just like the first ending, which is multiple endings, just playing the first ending, I could tell that there was just something different about what I was playing. There was just something like I just hadn't played a game like that, with like that kind of narrative and stuff. And I was like, what the fuck is this? So I would go on to research like what Nier was. I found out that like it's a spinoff of like a whole nother franchise. And I was like, what? And then I would just learn more about the guy behind it. Yoko Taro, he's known for, he writes really interesting characters. I don't want to spoil too much about the characters in this game, but some of them aren't conventional. And whenever asked about stuff like that, he says that the characters just kind of happen that way. It's not like he makes a point to make the characters inherently different. It's just that's who the characters end up being. Mm-hmm. And it's not like a selling point of the game. There are certain aspects of the characters that are hardly mentioned in game. But yeah, and I love the fact that he's always focused on like the morality of the characters and stuff. It's really, I love that sort of shit. So after playing Nier the first time, Nier became my favorite RPG, and Yoko Taro became one of my favorite directors.
How do you compare and contrast Yoko Taro with the Hideo Kojima? because both of them are really prolific game direct. Like, there are very few people in gaming where you could be like, this game was directed by this guy and it's a big deal. It's not like Hollywood where it's like all kind of about the who you got the director to be and then you spin off that. Gaming is a little different, but there are certain scenarios where that happens, and that would be Kojima, Yoko Taro, I guess Shigeru Miyamoto, although he's kind of in a weird spot now that he's like old. But stuff like that. So what's your opinion on these two different superstar directors?
I don't want to talk about it, but I would even argue like Suda 51 is a big one too. That's like people like whenever he makes a game, it's like it's a Suda game, you know.
Yeah.
Directly comparing Yoko Taro and Kojima, I think they have similarities, but I think Kojima makes more like blockbustery type things. You know, they definitely have themes, but you know they're also more akin to watching, you know, or playing like a big blockbuster movie. I don't think if Yoko Taro made a movie, I don't think it'd be a blockbuster.
No, absolutely not. But he's. I hesitate to say the word indie because I don't really think he would be like that, because he's certainly like really out there, and looking at some of the things from Nier, some probably expensive things that need to be in some of these.
I mean, just for like Drakengard being his first big directing role, that game has stuff that like you would not expect. You know, like I don't know how he got away with like some of the stuff in that game. I mean, which you're never gonna probably play it because it's rough. There's a character in that game that's a pedophile, and one of the endings has him being swallowed by giant demon babies. Yeah, which is fucked up, kind of amazing. Yeah, so I don't know how like he just went into it knowing what he wanted to make, and I can really respect that. He stick to his guns. He's never really pandered.
Oh, absolutely. That's one thing I was so impressed by in reading about him, is that he has this long history of like saying this is how the game's going to be, and they're like, we don't really want that. And he's like, well, I'm not going to make it then. Like that's like if somebody comes up to you with like $2 million, like make this game, and you're just like, only if you do it this way, and they're like, no, and you say, well, then I'm not doing it. That's some courage. That's some balls that this guy's got.
That's true. I mean, even Nier, they wanted him to take it in certain directions, and he was like, "No, I'm taking it in the complete opposite."
Can you go into that? What you told me about this earlier, and I think I slightly misunderstood, but I mean, I got your general message. But what was the expectation going forward for him, and how did he turn it on its head with Nier?
So Drakengard wasn't ever a huge franchise, but it was big enough to warrant him getting some sort of, I don't know, I guess, respect within Square Enix. So when it came to Nier was marketed as the next big story from Square Enix. Like they wanted it to be like a big deal, which is while we'll probably talk about some of the changes that was made for our version and how they tried to market it to us. But whenever the game was being developed, Square honestly wanted it to be I guess like more adult Kingdom Hearts. That's the kind of game they wanted. And I guess that makes sense because at the time, 2010, I guess at the time Kingdom Hearts would have been the most successful thing happening with Square Enix.
Yeah.
Or because like I think Kingdom Hearts 2 was like 2006 or something. And I don't think much was happening between then. Maybe like Final Fantasy 13 or something. I don't know. So I get where they were coming from, but Yoko Taro didn't want to make that kind of story, and he made the inverse of Kingdom Hearts. That's kind of like how to say that. Yeah, he made like at its core, it and Kingdom Hearts are both action RPGs. That's all. That's all it has in common.
Well, you can kind of see it with he's like they also have shadow enemies.
Yeah,
but the whole concept of them are, I mean, obviously so so completely different. It's impressive.
Yeah, and you have two partners that are always with you, and you travel to different places. But other than that, like 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 this is like the polar opposite of Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, and I got nervous because I'm not a big Kingdom Hearts fan. In fact, I kind of hate it. But so when you're like, you're supposed to make Kingdom Hearts, so there's little things that are like it, but it's totally the opposite in other ways. I was a little bit nervous because you weren't super clear which parts were similar and which parts were opposite. I was like, if this game plays like Kingdom Hearts, I'm gonna be a
well,
little rough.
I didn't want to spoil anything for you.
But I was super thrilled that the combat is nothing like Kingdom Hearts. Like it's, I mean, I think it's what Kingdom Hearts should be, what it should strive to
Oh
be
yeah,
like,
yeah.
because it's so like it's very good. The combat is very smooth and everything. We'll get into more of that later, but I was very nervous when you were talking about the connections, and I was thrilled that in all the right ways, it was both similar and different to Kingdom Hearts. That was good. Anything you want to say about Yoko Taro before we move past it? I know that I did a little bit of research on him, and yeah, it was just super fascinating to see somebody that was just so different within the gaming convention, because gaming has like a lot of staples that people tend to stick to, especially lately. It's just sequelitis. I mean, if you go to any company, they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a third this game, or we're gonna make a sequel to this game, and his take on all that just seems so different. So I thought it was really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, and the only actual like direct follow up to any of his games is Drakengard 2, and even that he was not directly involved with. I think he just did like he was like had up like a producer role on it. But any of the games that he's made, you could just jump into any of them as like a standalone game.
Okay, interesting. So you said that he did, but I read that he did take part in, or was a big part of Drakengard 3. How did that end up coming about, and how was that game received?
Drakengard 3?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the development history of that game. I know the reception was very mixed.
Oh no.
Because it came out after Nier, and it's not as good. I mean, it's a fine game, but it's nowhere near as good as Nier. Nowhere near as good as Nier. So yeah, it had a mix of like a mixed reception. So I also don't know if he'll end up returning the Drakengard, especially after the release of the first Nier, and then especially after Nier Automata being so successful. I don't know if that series will ever be touched again. You know, now they're doing Nier Reincarnation, which is like a mobile RPG thing.
Yeah. You know, I'm not opposed to mobile games. I'm just so used to being burned by them, being like, they kind of grab you and then they're just like, now pay money to stay in. And it's like, but I don't know. Like, if he's involved with it, it's got to be at least different. I might give it a look. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I don't play many mobile games either, but if fuck it, I'll play that. I'll try it. Yeah.
The last thing I want to touch on in this group is, can you explain, without going into too much detail about Nier, the connection between Drakengard and Nier?
Okay, do you want me to like directly explain where this comes from, or like with that, like to the start of Nier?
Yeah. Up to the start, and then yeah.
Okay, so Nier is actually a sequel to the first Drakengard, which is kind of funny because, like I said, he didn't have a lot of involvement with the development of Drakengard 2. So technically, like, you don't even need to play that game. The Drakengard 3 is like a prequel, so it happens before, so it doesn't even matter. So the original Drakengard was about a man named Kaim. He makes a pact with this dragon named Angelus, and there's a whole bunch of, it was like a war, like warring kingdoms. It's like a fantasy world, but it's like really dark. There's a lot of different elements in the story, really bizarre stuff. Like I said, but the thing with the pedophile, there's stuff about incest. There's some weird stuff in that game. Very dark. The game has multiple endings. That's something that Yoko Taro likes to do, and the last ending of the game was meant to be a joke ending, where you and your dragon Angelus get sent through a portal to modern day Tokyo. And whenever you arrive, you have to fight this thing called like the Queen. It's this big statue looking thing, and you play like a rhythm game to fight it and stuff. It's kind of stupid, but that's all it was meant to be. Like after they beat the Queen, the Queen falls to dust, and then you and Angelus fall down to the like Tokyo and stuff like that. And it's meant to be like a weird, like that's a weird ending.
Yeah.
And that's where this game starts. This game is a spin-off of the joke ending from Drakengard.
It's funny you say that, because I watched the thing from Klemps that you recommended, and it was a good watch. It was a good for anybody that's listening. You should totally check it out. Klemps, Klemps or CLE? I don't know.
Yeah, KLEMPS.
But you'll know it's like one of his bigger videos, and the way that he just you call it a joke ending and kind of stupid, but the way that he framed it, it was very serious, and obviously because of what it turns into, I think that's why. But it's funny to hear you say that, because his the way that his video tackled it was very not joking.
Well, if you were playing the original Drakengard, that would have been the most out there ending. It's like, well, I don't know how much you know about Silent Hill, but they always throw in a dog ending where like you find out everything's like a dog operating like a big keyboard and stuff. He's been pulling all the strings. It's like corgi. Yeah, and it's like it'd be like if they took that and made an ending off of that. You know, that's kind of the thing. It was like the ending for that was so off tone for the rest of the game because it's a big fantasy game. You know.
Yeah.
That you're like, oh, okay, that's like the joke.
Do you think Yoko Taro intended it as a joke, or that he had a bigger plan?
I don't know. It's hard to understand why Yoko Taro does anything.
Yeah,
there's elements to this game, to all of his games, that are like in other media. Like he puts stuff in like side stories or just interviews, so he'll just like reveal big plot points. You're like, what? And then or like even Nier Automata, there's a fucking stage play that's important to the plot of Nier Automata. So I don't understand why he does anything. It's his thought process is super out there.
Yeah. Well, interesting guy. Definitely, if you get a chance, you should look him up if you're listening. He's very interesting. Let's talk about the Nier release. So it let me pull it up here. It released on the PS3 and Xbox 360 in Japan on April 20. Is this right? April 22nd, 2010?
I know it was early 2010.
Yeah.
I got it in 2010. Isn't that fun?
And then in Europe, it was on the 23rd, 2010, and in North America, it was 27th, 2010. So actually almost like, and this was kind of not common back then, to my knowledge, but like a simultaneous release,
just
basically.
Like these lower budget, because at the time it was lower budget, Japanese games.
Yeah.
And you still see that today. There'll be a lot of Japanese games that'll come out maybe a year before we even get them.
Well, I mean, yeah. Even the big ones like Dragon Quest 11, which we're both kind of playing right now. That one was like a year. It's like They have the biggest budget ever. They still didn't even bother to do it. So I guess it just depends on what they're expecting. But for some reason, they maybe because of Kingdom Hearts, they had high hopes for this one. So.
Well, and like I said, they tried to, which I don't know when or how you want to talk about that, but they tried to change the marketing for this game for the American release.
Yeah, I think now is the time we bring that up.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do the marketing first, because that's going to tie into some of the things I'm going to talk about in a second. So when they released this game, they had a different expectation for the West of what we expected out of the relationships. And they, in the Xbox 360 version, in Japan, this was done by making him the parent, the father of the. In the story of Nier, we'll get into the plot, but it's about a person helping a girl with an illness. Now that girl, the relationship with that girl is either a father or sister, a daughter or a sister. So,
yeah. In Japan, that version is Nier Gestalt, and then Nier Replicant is the version with the brother, and now on PS3. For us, we just got Nier Gestalt.
Because we're Americans. We don't like...
Yeah, for both versions. Which, 2010, it makes sense. We were in the middle of the Gears of War, God of War, like all that big, masculine, kind of theme, and I think even like a couple years later, The Last of Us come along and have Joel's an old guy, so
Mm.
I think like they thought maybe if they made an action game with the young teenage boy, maybe a lot of Western audiences wouldn't pick it up.
Let me ask you, having played a little bit of both, you've played a lot of the original, I'm sure, and you played a decent chunk of the Replicant version. Which do you prefer, the Replicant or the Gestalt?
Honestly, I think both have merits. I think honestly, in terms of just like being an RPG, I think Gestalt is more interesting to have it as a father figure character.
Yeah.
But I warmed up to Replicant quite a bit during because like I'm almost near the end of my first playthrough of Replicant. I've warmed up to that character, and also that character has a little more significance with its plot details than the older Nier. But either way, I honestly I probably would still take Papa Nier over Brother Nier, just because it is more interesting.
Having never played the original, I think that it makes more sense. Maybe this might be a cultural thing. I'm not sure if that's what it is, and maybe that's their wise choice to make it the Papa across these and on Xbox 360. But I just don't see the motivation as high as being the brother, as opposed to being a father to daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like being the parent is kind of like you would go to the ends of the earth to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the brother, not saying that you still wouldn't, but I don't know. I think there's like a different dynamic.
Yeah, and it's like it's weird to see like a brother like being a father or a parent figure and like taking care of her in that way. So it's kind of distracting. I will say though, I heard that because the original intention of the whole thing is that it's the brother. Like that was from my research. That was the original intention. Then they messed around with it, and that might be one of the few studio interactions that Yoko Taro had that came out on the studio side or something. But they did some reshoots to get the Papa going, and some of them are apparently pretty awkward. Were there any like awkward parent moments in the original Nier?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few moments that are lines that are clearly meant for a very like a much younger character.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't want to spoil the plot details, but there's a part where one of your party members is hurt, and the Nier runs up to them and he's trying to get them up, and he's like, "You got to get up, like you can't leave me. We're friends." And for the younger character, he's like, I think at the time he's like 15 or something like that. So it makes sense for him to be like a little more like, doughy-eyed and like, get up, we're friends now,
Yeah.
But for a man that's almost 40, to be like talking to this, much younger character, be like, get up, we're friends, you can't leave me. It's kind of, it's very bizarre. And there's other small details that I'll get into when we start actually talking about the story. But
okay.
why I think, in terms of the narrative, I think it makes I'm torn because there's aspects of each that work better.
Yeah. Well, like the younger adventurer makes more sense with his teammates.
Yeah.
But the plot with his the girl makes more sense to me as a father daughter. So I can see it. And I don't hate the character. I like both of them. I like the younger one. I've never actually played the Gestalt version.
Yeah, I wish they would have given us the option to play Gestalt or like Replicant with this version.
That would have made sense. They had all the stuff for it. They might as well. Huh.
Yeah.
It was just a big F you to America. They're just like, this is what you should have gotten. I don't know.
It is cool to finally get to play it because other than this, like I would have to import a Japanese version, and I've almost done it a few times. I'm glad I never did because now I get to play an actual translated version of the original game. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about some figures here. I always like to talk about the sales. Here we go. According to Yoko, I like saying that, we weren't really in the red, but it wasn't exactly a success either. By the time the 1.2247, so that is the Replicant version, was released, the original two versions of Nier had sold about 700,000 copies.
Yeah.
The problem with was saying that, you know, that kind of numbers, you also got to know how much money it costs to make. He's saying we weren't really in the red, but it wasn't exactly a success either. So it's theoretically what he's saying is that they made money off of it. Now, how much kind of depends.
Like I said, Square was really pushing it as like one of their next big projects. But really, the original release, at least, it ended up becoming more of like a cult hit.
Yeah. On Metacritic, the PS3 version is at a 68 out of 100, and the 360 version is a 67 out of 100. Let's see what some of the reviewers are saying. Ryan Clements of IGN says that one of Nier's greatest flaws is its visuals. Well, GameSpot's Kevin Van Ord bemoaned the flavorless visuals and lifeless environments. And then Dustin Quillen of OneUp.com said that the game looks downright primitive. Reading all these different magazine organizations just give me flashbacks to when video game magazines were a thing. And then they were just something you wiped your ass with. And that the environments are bland, and some people are saying environments are bland and poorly rendered. The music and voice acting, however, were praised. Both are quite excellent, said some. Called the soundtrack absolutely fantastic. Chris Schilling of Eurogamer said the music was full of memorable themes, and one of the 4 reviewers of the Japanese weekly Famitsu termed it a cut above. Praise the section of the game that is presented entirely through text. Patrick Cullen of IGN Australia, however, said that while the different styles were interesting, one of the game's biggest strengths, they suffered from poor execution and cohesion that left the game with split personality disorder. Clemens said that developers' ideas sometimes outshine the actual implementation. I think that's a pretty important one. So, what do you think about their kind of mixed impressions of Nier upon release?
I think when it comes to the visuals, obviously, Cavia wasn't like a huge developer. I don't think they had the world's biggest budget on this project, but the visuals, I think they ran with what they did based on the story, and we'll get to that. So I think all of the complaints about the game's visuals are, I don't know, kind of like a moot point, because I feel like that's sort of like the intention of the game is to look a little barren and bland.
Mm-hmm.
But the gameplay styles, that's something we'll get into as well, as you know, down the road. I can somewhat agree that some of them don't work as well, but I still understand the intentions.
Yes.
It was a game, like, at the time, I don't think there was a lot of games out like this, and usually when you thought of like RPG, you thought of turn-based game, or I guess at that point like Kingdom Hearts or something, hack and slashy game. And this game really tried to turn a lot of that on its head and give you different little surprises and stuff. And I don't know, I don't think maybe the Western audience was really prepared for this at the time.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. In judging the game from my perspective of playing it now and just kind of thinking about games back then, they were not this creative. So I could totally see them being like a side-scrolling segment in a game in 2010. Like, what the hell? What is this? Or like a rail shooter? Like, yeah. What? Like, this doesn't make any sense. And they're, in a way, they're right, but in a way, that's kind of the point, right? Like, it's I could understand them not understanding it, but it's just a shame that when they're reviewing it like that, it seems like it's like blinding, like they're a little bit blinded towards the point.
Well, yeah, like I'm trying to think of like what was the big RPGs at the time, and it was like Fallout and Mass Effect, right? Like those were those are what everybody was basing everything off of. It was like these are like the high standards at the time. So this is definitely not either of those.
Well, yeah, and at this time, this is one of the reasons I stopped playing games at this time, is that JRPGs were like a bad word. You like any game like that, like like you said, it had to be a Fallout, it had to be a Bethesda game, or it had to be in first person, and like heavy D&D mechanics. There's nothing wrong with those things, but it also cut off this idea that you could make a game that's, a little more personal, a little more small, a little more focused on, the details. And it's a little disappointing. It's a little disappointing to hear those reviews. But again, I haven't played the original, so I can't really speak to some of their complaints. But I just wonder what was fixed in the remaster. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I do want to ask you. I've already bought Nier Automata, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But do you have anything to say about Nier Automata? Like, is it better or worse, or what's your opinion?
So good. I would say I favor the original Nier just because it is my first experience with Yoko Taro and the surprise of that, and not really knowing what I was getting myself into, and just the narrative and everything. But in terms of everything else, I think Automata is a huge improvement on the original game. And there's the aspects of Automata that I don't think any game is topped right now.
Really?
Yeah, in terms of narrative, gameplay, that game is it's just masterfully crafted. Because I think after the original Nier, I think Square Enix, they didn't touch the series for a little bit. I think Automata came out in 2016. So I think honestly, after they realized that there was some sort of a cult following and people really, were, loving this game, the people that actually played it and gave it time.
Yeah.
Where I think after that they really went all in on Automata, and it shows. If we ever do an episode on that, I'd be thrilled because that's a marriage of Yoko Taro and Platinum Games. Yoko Taro is has this fucking narrative mastermind, and then Platinum Games makes some of the most solid fucking games. So you put those two together, and it's just an amazing product. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen images of it, and some of it when I started playing Nier Replicant, I remembered some of the marketing for Nier Automata, and I was like, whoa! I remember these red orbs flying around and this weird shooter almost feel to it at times. I remember seeing that stuff. It was kind of impressive. I like that it blends those two disparate visual styles into one.
Yeah.
And it's very striking. So I'm excited to play it, especially after playing Nier Replicant.
I think you'll love it.
Okay, excellent. It's got a bunch of endings to it, as I remember.
Oh yeah. It has more endings.
Oh really?
God.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I'm pumped. I've got it ready to go. I'm not sure when I'll have time, but I've got a couple games to clear out, but then I'm good to go, man. I'm excited. Let me talk about Nier Replicant real quick before we actually get into the game. We're going to talk about the release of this version. It has a different director. It's Ito Saki. So it's not actually Yoko Taro directing, but I'm sure, he was there and helped. I'm not sure why he's not listed more prominently. But they asked him what he was trying to accomplish, and this I get from a Nier Replicant interview on Frontline, which is Gaming Japan, which I've never heard of, but it's a good interview. Check it out. And he said a couple things that I thought were interesting. He wanted to make a dirty Nier, which is a weird expression. Let me try to find the original quote. Which I just thought it was a weird way to say it. Dirty. One thing they did to facilitate this was to have a lot of blood. The team had previously discussed Nier Automata was a Nier that had a sterilized and clean beauty to it. And so they aimed to make a dirty Nier. So they wanted to add a lot of blood to emphasize the tragedy of what you're doing in the game. Another thing that he said was they wanted to take the strengths of the original and translate them into a form that are best suited for the current day. I think when we talk about the gameplay in this, we need to circle back to think about if this was a success or not with Nier Replicant. And just kind of keep those ideas in mind. It's difficult to track the sales of these games because now it's all online and there's half the numbers are from an online thing, so it's very, very hard to track sales. So unfortunately with current games, it's not something I'm going to report on as much. But the reception has been very, very positive for Nier Replicant. A lot of people seem to be really into it. It's almost like reinvigorated the fan base. A lot of people that I think never played it are now jumping on board and are really into it, especially after Automata. I think that.
It's because Automata did stupidly well.
Yeah, yeah, which came out of nowhere for me. I was like, Nier, wasn't that like that weird game that nobody talks about anymore? And then they released Automata and everyone was playing. I'm like, what? Why?
Well, dude, one of my friends, Ethan, he was talking to me one day, and after Automata was announced, and he was like, because at that point we had no clue how well that game was going to do, and he was like, "Wow, they're doing a sequel to Nier with Platinum Games. Like, they made this game especially for you, Alex." Like, I was like, "Yeah, I know," and so I was like, "I hope this does well," and I was just like, I was fucking thrilled when I was seeing this game just do fantastic.
Yeah, it's games like that you want to see do well, even if you don't really like the style of it or aren't into that kind of thing. You want to see a game where people got creative freedom to do well. Yeah. Like, that's just important for gaming. You don't want. It sucks when every game is supposed to be a sequel. Like, if we lived in a world that Ubisoft owned, it would just be hell for video games. It would just be terrible. So I was super excited to see it do so well. Even though I never played it or anything, but I was like, I know that this game is different, and I'm excited that they got such a chance on the big stage. 40 minutes in, are you ready to talk about Nier?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's hit the prologue. This one took me by surprise because I popped into your stream real quick when you were playing it on the first day, and just to kind of take a look and support the channel. And I saw you traveling around in the village. I was like, oh, okay, typical. And then I booted it up myself that one day, and I was like, all right, get ready. Let's talk about the prologue. The story begins in the summer of 2049. I'm getting this off of the fandom. In the ruins of an unidentified city, a prolonged snowstorm envelops the region, trapping the few survivors in a gripping cold with little shelter and minimal food. Two who have made it through the onslaught of climate change lie hunkered down in the remains of a grocery store, a man and his daughter or sister, depending on the version of the game. The girl suffers from an uncontrollable cough, while her wary father-brother weighs a fateful decision. A mysterious book lying on the ground between them taunts the man with its power to help. He only needs to hand over his soul to receive the tome's power. A number of monsters in the shades appear, and the father-brother fights them off to protect the girl with the help of the book. After defeating the shades, the child grows sicker. Man, I was very confused when I popped this in and started playing like this. I said, oh. And then also when you're fighting all the shades, you grow like 30 levels.
Yeah. You just keep like leveling up like crazy, which I think is smart. They let you see some of like the magic you're gonna get to use throughout the game.
Yeah, it's a tutorial.
Because like some of them you don't get to way later, but it's just like it's just cool to play with some of it in the first little bit and play around. Do you want to talk about like the context of this? Or?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes full circle, doesn't it? It goes.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain it? Go ahead.
That's not snow.
So it ties into the Drakengard ending that you're referring to.
So maybe I'll just explain that part, and I won't explain anything else because I don't want to spoil anything yet.
Sure.
So after the events of that last ending in Drakengard, you and your dragon Angelus fall to the floor of Tokyo, and Queen fall apart and stuff. And where you're from, another world, there's a whole bunch of like nonsense sciencey jargon I can get into, but I don't want to do that. Basically, the magic spreads a disease called white coronation. White coronation causes people to basically dissolve into salt. And that's not snow. That's salt.
yeah, which is pretty weird, but it doesn't not. That's the weird thing about this is I was kind of one of the ways that I think he contradicts like a Hideo Kojima is that some of the stuff in here there's nothing that really doesn't make sense. If you fully understand everything, and that's I think some of the magic of Yoko Taro is that he is a very well thought out director, like story designer. Like if you really understand it, there's I just finished the game Chrono Cross. There'll be a show on that one soon. There are so many broken threads, so many loose story elements.
Holes and stuff, yeah.
Oh my god, the game is about holes, and the game has more than its fair share. And so to see a game that actually, it is complicated when you look at it just at the base, and you explore the different things, you try to ask questions on it, and then the answers are there if you want to find them. And it's weird that it's salt, but it makes sense because that's what the dissolving big dragon thing, like it infected it, and that's kind of the pressing matter of why everybody's sick. So it's a great little twist on the idea of like
it's the anti Kingdom Hearts, dude. Because Kingdom Hearts is needlessly complicated, and none of it makes sense.
yeah. So I appreciate it, and I liked, especially, again, I can't stress enough, if you have the time, check out the Klemps video. It explains a lot of it in detail.
Which really helped me because, like I said, I played this when it came out, and obviously there wasn't a huge, there was like people like reviewing the game, being like, Nier was like is an action RPG and this and that, but there weren't really big analysis videos, and I kind of like read up on the ties and stuff. What about whenever Klemps did his series on Nier and the other Drakengard games and stuff, it really helped because he tied stuff together that I'm like, oh, I never realized this, or I didn't ever put these two things together. And it's like, oh, okay.
Real quick, when he was talking about the connection to Drakengard, what about those red eye things? I didn't fully understand that.
So basically, whenever in the Drakengard universe, there's these omnipotent beings, and you can make a pact with them and stuff. And there's a bunch more. I don't want to go into the lore of that series, but basically, with the sickness, White Coronation, basically either you would make a pact with this god, basically, or turn into salt. And if you became a pact with the god, you'd become like this red-eyed monster, and it's basically like a zombie type infection. And it was spreading throughout Tokyo, and then later spread throughout the rest of the world through other means and stuff. There's a whole story with that stuff. Mm-hmm. And then so basically, the earlier parts of Nier here, there's basically a quote unquote zombie apocalypse. I hate calling it that because it's way different, but
it's the closest thing zombie you can understand.
Yeah, it's the closest thing I can really kind of like relate it to. And there's stuff we'll get into later where there's elements of other organizations and people trying to figure out how to survive and how we're going to keep the human race alive after this. But yeah, so the whole red eye thing is basically like these evil, people that have become like slaves to this omnipotent being.
Okay, interesting. So interesting. So now we get the actual game where you get to play as the character you're going to play as going forward, and it looks like the guy from the prologue, but it actually takes place. What?
His name is Nier canonically. If you want to call him Nier.
Okay, let's just call him Nier from here on forward, and that'll yeah. So canonically, it's Nier. The story continues 1,312 years into the future.
Whoa!
That's that first SpongeBob transition.
Did that shit throw you off?
yeah. It didn't because I saw you playing it, but the part that threw me off was the first part of seeing him in the city because I was like, this is not what I saw at Alex. So I'm like, what is going on here? So I was thrown off, but on the first part. His daughter, sister, and can I talk about just through Replicant, and would you understand? Mm-hmm. Okay, because I only played Replicant, so I just know it as my sister. Okay.
Yeah.
So his sister has succumbed to a violent cough and must remain in bed when he searches for a cure. Though much time has passed, the world in which his family resides is, in many ways, one of a simpler time. Villagers live in modest homes and work together to ensure a better life for their community. The entire village knows of young Yona's illness, that's their sister's name, and lends their support by hiring Nier for numerous odd jobs and errands. Some would say the work is beneath a man of his caliber, but he holds his head high and does whatever he can to provide for Yona, all the while hoping that the village's wisest member, Popola, and her twin sister, Devila, can discover a cure. So this is the setting of where Nier kicks off. And honestly, most of the game is here, and in the various little parts outside of it. What do you think of the world of Nier, just in general? And this is kind of ties back into the reviews from earlier.
Do it like as in world? Do you mean just the setting or like the like?
Yeah, yeah. The general set. We got the town. We got. What do you think of like the appearance of it? The whole. Yeah.
I think it's. I mean, and it's hard to talk about this game without talking about
The
the
story.
music,
Oh.
the music as well. I
Yeah.
think the world design and um, combination with the game soundtrack works super well. The game, like, I really love being like, whenever you're back in this village, it always feels they always have like the really like somber music, and it feels really safe, when you're just kind of there. And then you go out in like the fields. The world's not that big, to be honest. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's I think it's up to budget. I think that like they kind of just did what they could. But whenever you're like you're in certain areas, I think the music really amplifies the emotion that the setting's supposed to have. And I like the world.
Man, I was like, when I was playing this for my first go through, I was thinking of like Shadow the Colossus if it were an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's
That's a good.
so barren. But like there's little enemies in this game because it's an RPG, so you fight stuff. But like it's so barren and you're just looking around, and I don't think it's a negative. I don't think there's anything wrong with having barren environments like Shadow the Colossus. I think it tells a story if the world is empty. Now you could argue that maybe they did it for budget purposes, or that it's barren because they didn't have any money to program stuff. But I think if you tool the story right, just like how you would do an apocalyptic story, you
Yeah.
can make it make sense, and you can see the remnants of society wherever you go. I think they told the story visually incredibly well, and it's funny to see like if you go north to the temple, you can see like if you look around, you can see like a big city and like the tall buildings and the mechanics of what they were doing before, and then you go back to town and it's like, oh, there's like a little quaint village that's current that they've currently set up. And it's like you see the juxtaposition of them like almost starting over or something.
Which I love that. I love that version of like the post apocalypse. Um,
Yes.
because you always see like post-apocalyptic stuff, especially in like American media, that's like the ruined cities and big muscular camps and Mad Max and all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is more like the end of the world is almost like a beautiful thing in this game.
Oh my god, yeah. It's well, I'm a sucker for anything post-apocalyptic. You just tell me it's in a post-apocalyptic world, I am fucking down because I want to see what their thoughts are. And I don't care if it's like a Mad Max. I like Mad Max. Or if it's like a Nier. I like to see what story they're trying to tell with the future where our world is kind of destroyed. And you kind of see how they've built it back up and what's the current customs and Nier is done so creatively that like part of the whole game is like either they've built all the way up from nothing and turned it into a new thing, or they're stuck in the past and they're trying to like figure out stuff that already existed and how they can adapt it. You have the seaside area that it's so beautiful. It's almost like
Yeah.
European, and it's like they did all this themselves and they built this whole thing. You contrast that to the other side of the map, and it's two dudes trying to figure out machines. Like I love. There's this awesome contrast there. That's like the different ways that they're coping in this new world. And I think it's done so subtly, but so well. Yeah.
What's your favorite area in the game?
The Airy.
The area is good.
The Airy is it's like a canyon, and they live on the edges of the canyon and created bridges between each other that they can see each other. But it's ironic that they did that because they don't seem to ever leave. They're all stuck in their little cylinder houses. And you can like go up to the house and like, hello. And they're just like, get away from me. The whole world's over. And they seem terrified. And I read in the music when you go there is like, it's at the beginning when you go there, it's like, why is the music so intense here? Like the music is pounding, like screaming, howling, like oh my god, it's terrible. It's like okay, I'm just walking around, like it's nothing. It's weird that they won't come out, but I read
Yeah.
a really cool rumor, and I love games that give themselves the ability to have rumors that they're the only people that actually know what they are,
Yeah,
which is
yeah. They're the
such
ones
a
who
cool
actually know
concept.
about the shades. Yeah.
So I think the area is the most interesting. What's your favorite place?
It's a toss up. I'm gonna say in terms of world building, it's Facade. Or
Okay, yeah,
yeah, because it's a sandy village. People have made their own language and their own set of rules, and it's I don't know. It's a very interesting. It's almost like to me when I play that area, it reminds me of something I would see in a Zelda game.
oh yeah,
Um, yeah, it's very Zelda like, but it definitely has it like its own twist.
yeah.
Other than that, I would say the manor is my other favorite part of the game.
Oh, I know why.
Yeah, that area. We'll get to that, but that area. When I first played that game, I was just like, "Oh, I know exactly what this is doing."
Yeah. I
So
almost was like rolling my eyes when I got there, but no, I totally get it. Yeah. Um, and it's funny you say that about Facade because I was immediately reminded of just JRPGs in general and how they like you go from town to town, and that one
yeah.
had the most going to town feel. Because yeah, it was so like we have our own rules here. This is rule 1,355. You can't do this, and like you broke rule 6,800, and it was almost comical. But
Oh yeah. Well,
it's so
there,
like yeah,
there's story elements with the rules that are comical where they start to contradict each other.
yeah. I felt very dragon like at home with like no like playing Dragon Quest and stuff there, because all the towns just have their own characteristics and
Yeah.
problems because of who they are. That they do that, and it's so visually striking. That Facade and I can't. Did it even have a name besides like the seaside port or something? I can't remember.
I think it's just a seaside port. I don't know.
But those two places are so visually beautiful. Just like I like just exploring them and just jumping around there. I wish you could go into it, but I obviously know why you can't like explore literally everything. But man, they're beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those two. I think it would be like the best to like show like the art design of the game.
Yeah.
So,
Um, besides Nier, and Yona, those are our two main characters, and we've kind of talked about Nier and his, Yona's sick. There's not much character to Yona, for obvious reasons, but she's just like a sick girl.
yeah, she's like I forget how old she is, she's like 5 or something. I don't know. She's very young. She's just doing her best.
Doing the best in these hard times. But the major character you meet before the beginning, and Devil and Popola, I guess we'll talk about them for a second here, but it's weird because as a new player, I didn't really think they were anything more than just like side spot characters.
Yeah.
I wish they would have gone into more, but I guess I understand it from the ending perspective.
Honestly, if you which well, spoilers, they're important. And we're not going to say how, but if you replay the game, well, what you've done the multiple endings, but even then, you don't replay the full game. You just replay like half of it, basically.
Yeah.
If you replay the full game, there's dialogue with the characters that I think subtly hint to their role in the game.
Right.
There's stuff that's just like that you would take out of context, the first time, and then now you're like, oh.
Yeah. I kind of wish they did a little more with it, because when the big twist would happen, I just kind of was like, oh, I just thought they were nothing, and then they were something. And it was interesting, but it didn't like smack me, because I was like, oh, I didn't do it. It's a twist. Part of the good thing about a twist is that it should change your perspective on things, and I just didn't have any perspective on them. I just thought Popola was like quest giver.
Before we get to the first character, I would like to maybe talk about the sickness and also maybe the shades for a second.
Go for it. Let's do it.
So throughout the game, you fight these creatures called shades. They look like generic shadowy monsters, maybe something akin to a Heartless from Kingdom Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of like blobby black monsters, and they can they have writing and on their bodies, and they can shoot magic and stuff. Um, and the sickness that Yona has is called the Black Scroll, where it has something to do with the shades, and you'll see these like black letters flowing all over her body and stuff, and that's sort of like where that stems in. So you can tell that they have something to do with each other, but just not sure what.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. it's hinted at, and we're going to learn a little bit more because we're going to meet our first little side character, Grimoire Weiss, who is my favorite character in the whole game.
Yep, mine too.
The voice actor. Do you know the name of the voice actor?
No,
I could find it.
I'm terrible with that. I'm sure if we had BioPhoenix on, he'd tell me right away.
Grimoire Weiss. Come on, give me the thing. Come on. Okay, English voice was Liam O'Brien. I don't know who that is, but anyway, Liam O'Brien, you've done a very good job because he has the perfect amount of comical British imperialism meets like powerful voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He I love Grimoire, which we can kind of talk about like the context of how you find him. Yona hears about these things what is it, like the lunar tears or whatever, that can help cure her, and she goes to find some at this lost shrine, and she ends up being captured there, and that's where you find Weiss. So Grimoire Weiss, I think, is also I don't think this one has any ties to Kingdom Hearts. I think honestly this one's more of like a nod to like games like Zelda. Most 3D Zelda games give you a companion. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're comical, but usually like they're pretty like, hey, I'll help you out. Grimoire Weiss is constantly ridiculing you and everybody around you.
Yeah.
If he was in a Zelda game, he'd be like, Link, you what are you doing, you fucking idiot?
What are you doing with that sword?
Yeah,
well, the original idea of Nier was supposed to be like based on the idea of a book.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like they've never been clear how that why that was scrapped and how this came to be. But the original concept when they were first developing it had nothing to do with Drakengard. It was just going to be like fables come to life, basically, like, and that sort of thing. And you'll see that all the enemies, all the big enemies, the bosses, are named after characters from fables.
Hansel and Gretel, and
yeah, Hook and all those other characters. So you'll kind of see that in reflection. And I think the whole thing with Grimoire Weiss being a book, I think that's might have been left over from that concept.
Yeah, and I think that has to be what he came from, and they already did all the designs for him, so they just left him in there, which I'm fine with. I thought that was a clever way to give you magic, is that he's just the book that follows you around and casts spells. That's kind of neat.
He does make sense within the context of the story, how they write it. So.
Yeah. Can you explain his context within the story?
Without spoiling anything, I don't know.
We don't have to. We're in the story now. You can go for it.
Okay. So Grimoire Weiss, there's a bunch of different books that were basically created back whenever people were trying to figure out what the fuck was happening with all this stuff. And Grimoire Weiss used to be a man. Basically, through these kind of events, he got turned into this book, and he was supposed to be reawakened at a certain point to assist in this big collaboration between him and this other book, and we'll explain that towards the end of the game. But you've awakened Weiss way too early, so Weiss remembers nothing of that. Which is convenient for the plot, yeah, but
yeah.
So,
I definitely, to me, the best character in the game. He gives you magic too, so he's also a major player for you. At this point, the game basically gives you what your core gameplay is going to be like, which is, and we can talk now. I want to transition to gameplay, but he gives you your magic. So The gameplay is you using sword attacks at first, and then you spread that out later. But like axes and spears and heavy swords. We'll get nah. So you have those attacks as your physicals, and then you have magic attached to R1 and L1. It's been a minute.
Actually, you can attach them to all 4 top buttons.
Oh, okay.
Did you not know that?
No.
Yeah, you can go in because I think when you start playing, they have L1 and R1 and L2 and R2, and I think 2 of them are block and dodge. Mm-hmm. You can actually go into your magic and equip any magic to all 4 of those buttons.
Oh,
so usually, because I don't even use block, so usually I just keep 1 button for dodge and then the other 3 for magic.
I would have done that. I never use block either. Oh my god. Okay. Well, good to know. You should know that if you're playing it. You can take out the block because it's basically useless. But your magic, you gain it as you play the game. You gain new spells. You gain them pretty quickly. So I wouldn't worry too much about the collectathon piece. It happens pretty quickly. And then you buff yourself. The game's... there isn't really much equipment in the game. Most of the equipment is relegated to your weapons. So you just upgrade those, and honestly, it's like the counter to every RPG before it, because the weapons that you buy are better than pretty much anything you find. You can buy... I remember farming in the early game for one of the first weapons in the store, and I never found a better weapon until I became an adult. Like, ever. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
It's just weird how usually they're like the ultimate weapon is somewhere in a forest deep in a tree or something. It's the opposite in this. You can find it like a weapon in the furthest reaches of the map, and it's pretty much shit. But you need it for reasons. But most of the equipment gets upgraded through words, which I thought was really funny. Because you find words when you're out and about, and those are what Grimoire Weiss remembers, and he gets added to his library that you can attach things to. And you can basically buff anything, any stat you could think of in the game gets buffed through these. My primary ones were obviously damage for either magic or physical, and then experience. But you can do item drop rate. You can do a lot of weird stuff.
It's a super creative upgrade system. Honestly, after playing Automata, it's hard to go back to this because Automata does a similar thing. You have, I wouldn't say a companion. You have a thing, it's like a robot that follows you around, kind of like Vice does. And instead of words, you get chips, and you can kind of customize it that way. But the way they do the chip system in Automata, I think, is done way better than the system in this game. So after playing Automata and going back to this, I was like, damn, like... I wish this was like Automata.
Well, it makes me more excited to play that. But I thought this was good. I wish that there was more equipment in it. I'm just, in a classic RPG sense, I'm excited to go to the next town and find new equipment. But it's not really that important. So it functions fine without it. So
yeah, I don't know if maybe like adding armor or like that kind of stuff would have really mattered.
Yeah, I don't think it really needs it.
Yeah,
it's just my RPG brain was wired to be like, where's my chess piece? It just doesn't matter. The next character you're going to find is Kaine, and she's around the Aerie. Yeah, the Aerie. Yeah, and boy, does she have a fan base online. I like her character as well. Tell me everything you know about Kaine.
Dude, I like, in terms of the main characters, I like all the main characters. It's tough to really say any of them are bad. Kaine, how much detail do you want to go into?
As much as you can. So I'm gonna be like breaking all these up into little bits. So it's this would be the segment that we talk about Kaine.
Kaine is interesting because when you first find her, she is battling a big lizard named Hook. Mm-hmm. And Kaine has a very particular peculiar outfit on. She dresses kind of impractically. She as Grimoire Weiss would say, she looks like a hussy.
He says that many times, yes.
Which is always cracks me up whenever he comments on her. He
Yeah.
always comments on how she looks like she's fighting in her underwear, which is so funny.
Well, and Nier says that when he first meets her. He says, "Why is she in her underwear?"
Yeah. It's that self-aware. The game's that self-aware that they know that her design is kind of dumb. So
Do you think that there was pressure from the studio to make a character like that?
I don't know. I think it's interesting whenever you learn the context of the character, because then it kind of again turns it up on its head. If you've ever ever played Nier and you don't really know the context of the story, and you ever, I don't know, jerked off to Kaine, we're gonna make it really awkward for you in a minute.
And that's why I think they got pressure to make a character like that, and then they're like, let's fuck over everybody who forced us to do that.
Exactly. So Kaine, a little bit of backstory. Kaine grew up with her grandmother, living outside of the village of Eri. They were kind of outsiders. Her grandmother's name was it's either Carly or Curly. It depends on the version, I think.
Okay.
I'm gonna call her Carly. Carly raised her outside of the village because the village didn't accept Kaine for various reasons. And we'll get into that in a minute. And they taught her to be a strong, independent character, whatever. And Hook, this giant lizard shade, would go on to kill her grandmother. So that's kind of like where you're picking up with the story with Kaine. Kaine's kind of has this vendetta against Hook, and that's where the fight begins there. Do you want to go into why Kaine is not accepted?
Of course.
So there's two reasons, and they're both kind of like side by side. The first one, which is more obvious when you're playing the game, is that Kaine is part shade. She has a shade living inside of her. His name's Tyran. So there's various moments. That's how she can use magic, and that's kind of like where she gets her powers. There's various moments within the game where she'll kind of have that power. She might become overpowered and stuff like that. And there's endings to do with Tyran, but so that's sort of the first reason why she's she's not accepted. She's half of like what these people fear. Also, she's a hermaphrodite.
Yeah, which I had no idea about. The game does. I mean, the game has hints about it, but honestly, I don't think most people would pick up on it unless they knew.
No.
Like you told me, and I had no clue. And then I read online, they're like, "Yeah, they tell you. They say, why are you acting like a guy? We know what you really are." I'm like, that could mean a million things. That doesn't specifically mean that. That could easily mean the shade part, like you whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So like I didn't pick up on that at all. But in like reading it and understanding the game a little better, it makes a lot of sense. It's just I am impressed that nowadays with all the virtue signaling and all the strive to be diverse, it was so impressive to see that they added this character and didn't even tell you that they were different.
Oh, exactly. If this were a game by, which we'll get to another character that has diversity as well. If this was a game by BioWare, they would have marketed that shit out of that.
Yes.
And they did not do that. I mean, you can easily skip that in this game. But I think it's important because it makes her character design make more sense. She wants to show off the more feminine qualities of herself, so that's kind of why she dresses in her underwear.
Yeah, it makes sense. I still get the impression it was done for marketing purposes, like her character originally. Yeah. And he just kind of like he said, like his style was to work backwards. He took that as like, okay, our end goal is that we have to have a girl with like in her underwear fighting. Okay.
So how do we do that?
How do we do that in my style? And then he did all this, which is genius. It's so funny to see him like turn it on. But he made like a legitimately great character. Kaine is beloved in the community, and not just for her looks.
Kaine's great. She's when you first find her, she's once again just based on the design, she looks very, I don't know, I guess slutty, and maybe you would think she's like a bimbo, slutty girl character or something. No, Kaine's brash and smart, and she's like a survivalist, and mean. Kaine's awesome. Yeah, mean.
She says, and her interactions with Grimoire Vice are pretty legendary.
Oh yeah, they're the best. those two go back and forth like crazy.
Because he calls her
Uh,
hussy and she calls him a magazine.
yeah, yeah, they're always. Well, dude, in the original version, there's a part in the game with that you know what I'm talking about, where she just goes to fuck off on Vice, and the original English release, the opening of the game's like whenever like the Square Enix logo pops up, it starts with that. It starts with
Oh.
her being like, "Vice, you dumbass!" Blah 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 blah. It starts like, yeah, that's the first dialogue you hear when you start up the game,
Oh
and
my god.
it kind of sets the tone, and I really like that. I kind of sad that they don't have that in Replicant, but yeah, Kanye's a great character.
It's in this part of the game where you've done most of the missions that you're gonna do as a child. At least in this version. I guess in the assault version, is it just you become an older you? Do you change at all?
Yeah, yeah, that's something that I was like. I didn't think about when I started playing Replicant, but yeah, in Gestalt, it's just like he just becomes like a little more serious. We do need to touch on something before we transition the time skip, though.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not
Oh,
moving
okay.
yet.
Sorry. But yes, and Replicant, yeah, you do become older, which is an aspect of that game I do like.
Gosh. Yeah, yeah. It's just more pronounced as a when you're a kid. But in this version, we're going to hit on a lot of different gameplay types. We're in traveling to different towns and different cities and different locations. You're challenged through these dungeons to do some different mechanics, and that's really, really uncommon. It might be what they were referring to in the Wikipedia I was reading about people's reviews, saying that the game kind of splashed around to different styles and felt weird. I mean, we get everything from text adventures to shoot 'em ups to a Resident Evil segment that we're going to talk about, to side scrolling, to just all these weird different mechanics. What is your take on these different gameplay types?
I personally, while I think some of them maybe don't work as well as others, I think it works in the context of keeping the game fresh. I think each area, not only do you remember like the music and the art design, but the gameplay also helps to set a tone and kind of make it feel like its own thing. Like you're not doing because I get why they took this approach. If I just was running around slashing my sword around, every environment, it might get a little old.
Yeah.
So I do like that change of like perspective, even when it's just like something small, like there's one area that kind of goes overhead, and it's just like I don't know, it just helps make it feel different. Um, so
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
I'm going to take a criticism but turn it into a positive. Um, Most of them were enjoyable. Most of them were fine. I didn't really have an issue with any of them, except one. You could probably guess which one that is. If you go to the forest,
You didn't like that part?
no,
Oh,
no. So if you go to the forest, everyone's asleep, and the only way to solve the issues that they're having are to do it through dreams. Now, what are the dreams? Are they awesome worlds that are colorful and bright and allow you paranormal and strange scenarios? No, they're text adventures. You just have to read a lot of text and.
which to be honest, they keep up that thing too. Whenever you're like transitioning between days, sometimes Nier will have a dream and it'll just be like text, like black text.
Yeah,
Um,
so I guess I appreciate that. I absolutely hated these text parts, and I especially hated them uh, in the search for more endings. So,
oh yeah.
um, we can touch on that in a little bit, but I really, really hated the text parts. But what I will say is that is also what makes the game so creative, is having
Well,
those moments.
and I think that part makes sense within the context of the story as well. When you learn about more about that area, is I don't know how much you want to talk about. I mean, fuck it, we're not going to talk about the Forest Myth much. the Forest of Myth, people are losing their whatever, they're falling asleep and things are happening. There's this big tree in the middle of the Forest of Myth that's actually a giant computer.
Right.
That stores all of the world's history. So I think the interactions with it, I think, makes sense being a text based adventure because it kind of reminds you of old computers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't blatantly ever say that it's a computer, but in other books and other things like that, they mention it being a kind of like a big computer. So
Well, in ending E, it's
well, yes,
right.
ending, but in the I'm sorry, in the original game,
Yeah.
ending E didn't exist.
Right.
So,
so yeah, I get why it's there, and I appreciate that it's there, and it's like if you were to have a big dinner, like a big Thanksgiving dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
You love that there's a big Thanksgiving dinner, and you're just happy that it's there because everyone gets their piece and everyone has a good time. Cranberry sauce is also a part of Thanksgiving dinner, and you might not like it as much. But as a whole, I love
cranberry sauce.
Oh well, crazy. But I like that I get the variety, and I have to take a little bit of brunt just to get the variety. So I'm happy with it. I don't personally enjoy that part or replaying that part. That when you're older.
With that being the only part you didn't actually like that's pretty impressive. Yeah.
No, yeah, and that's the thing is what they do really well. And maybe this is a really well implemented text piece. I just don't like text adventures, so it's like okay, whatever.
I'm more open to them. I played games like Suda 51's the Silver Case, and stuff like that. So I'm more open to like that kind of stuff anyway. So
gotcha. So it's like it's an evil that I will take because it's the idea of it that makes the game better. So I'll deal with it. One of the last things you do, I touched on Emil in my notes here, but I actually don't want to talk about him as much until after the time skip, for obvious reasons. But you will meet Emil in a pretty interesting Resident Evil style segment. I assumed this would be one of your favorite parts. Is this the case?
Oh yeah. and I love the character of Emil. Basically, Yona has been riding back and forth with this boy. He's sick, and she asks you to go help him out. When you get there, you find out that for one, he hasn't been writing the letters. It's been his butler, which raises a bunch of questions. But he says that she took the letters out of context. Still, raises a bunch of questions. But anyway, when you get there, you find out Emil is this kid who's cursed. Whenever he looks at people, they get petrified. They become stone. So the mansion that he lives in has this eerie Resident Evil type feel to it. Everything's in black and white because time's kind of stopped, because everybody that was there has been turned to stone except for him and the butler. So you're just trying to help him find a cure, basically.
I want to skip over to the time jump and the events that lead up to it, but was there anything you wanted to talk about more with Nier as a child?
I'm trying to think. We didn't talk about the junk heap. I don't know if you want to touch the junk heap at all right now. We didn't touch the junk heap, and we didn't touch Facade, really.
Well, again, I don't deal with entirely in the story segment, like per spot. But if there's moments that you want to talk about there that hit you, go for it.
I think the junk heap's notable because it's all like animatronic stuff within the junk heap, and you meet two characters there that I find to be really interesting. These two brothers, and you're kind of helping them out, helping them find their mother and stuff. And then Facade, I really like when you go to Facade because you find out that they're the only village. They're the weirdest village of the game. They're the only village that will actually accept Kaine because she saved one of their children, and you kind of get some story stuff there, and you have to go save this prince in a temple. There's what did you think of whenever the prince finds the mask and he does like the Zelda?
That was great. That was such a great little nod.
Clearly,
and I actually read something in one of the interviews about that, is that he would do those little nods, and they're like, "Why don't you think it conflicts with the tone of the game?" And he was like, "Well, I just want people to realize that games can have bad or have dark tones or depressing tones, but they're still supposed to be fun." Yeah, so I put these little things in there. It was very funny. Uh,
So I think that's honestly because you don't go back to that temple. That's one of my favorite areas in the game as well. Is that like temple because the gameplay style there they give you rules for each of the which makes sense because facade
yeah,
is a place of rules.
yeah,
Whenever you're in each of the different rooms in the temple, they'll be like, okay, you can't walk, you can't use magic, you can't jump. It's just you have to
yeah.
find your way through the rooms. They're almost like mini puzzles.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that quite a bit. I think, and that is such a fun thing. So we can talk about. I love it when a video game acknowledges that it's a game. And my first big experiences with this were Persona, where they're just like stat points, and they'd be like, "How do I like befriending demons and stuff?" And it's like it's a lot of like the game winking at you, being like, "Yeah, this is a video game, by the way. You're supposed to play it." I enjoy it when a game, even the ones that take it so seriously, take a moment and are just like, by the way, this is a video game. And this game does it a lot, like including like when they shoot like the magic red orbs at you and it's like all in like a big line and you just have to dodge it and stuff. Like all that stuff is such a good call out to the fact that it's a video game and they're just like having fun with you. And this part was even like the biggest one maybe where yeah, they're just like, by the way, you can't roll in this one. It's like, oh shit. It's because like if you think about it realistically, that makes absolutely no sense, and when
Oh yeah.
applied to anything, but like in the terms of a game, it's like oh, this is like a challenge segment. It's like dun dun dun, let's do it. And so I thought it was so funny and so clever, and actually really fun to try to solve some of these without doing certain buttons.
Yeah, I mean, they get. I think one of the rooms gets to the point to where like the only thing you can do is like walk slowly and jump.
Oh my
So you just-
god! Oh my
you
god!
you need
Yeah.
to find your own way around the room. There's like things trying to shoot you and stuff. It's fun.
I had to hold down the block for that so I could just make sure I didn't run. It was
Oh,
so annoying.
oh, I in that segment, I always jump on top of the blocks that are shooting you. I always go to the one side of the room and just jump on top and just use that to get across.
Yeah.
it's uh, it's
So
it's just
annoying.
fun because it kind of makes you like find your own solution and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, I loved that. That was so much fun. Um so what ends up happening is you once you go to all the different places, the city gets attacked, a giant shade attacks and you tackle it around, you fight it. It actually tears through some of the city, which is really fucking cool. It was almost like a Shadow of the Colossus had a segment where it actually tore through a town, which it kind of does, but in this one it's like a huge thing.
yeah,
So that was freaking awesome. And then you end up fighting it back in the library, which is kind of the not the hub, but like where you get your quests usually, and where the
yeah.
town is like decided that that's like the safe haven of everything. And it attacks. X and X and X happen, and down comes a new character who looks kind of interesting. He's the dark lord. What is he?
The Shadow
The
Lord.
Shadow Lord. That's what he is. I'm used to playing
Yeah.
Dragon Quest, but I think it's almost like a nod to that. But he's the Shadow Lord, and he's this guy that's like in angel wings, and he's got dark skin, and he looks fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And he takes
He's-
Yona. So
Yeah, and he's also accompanied by a book named Grimoire Noir,
yes.
which is important. That's the book from the beginning. Um, so, yeah, he's the character. They don't ever explain much about the Shadow Lord on purpose, but he's got a cool design. I think his design of Replicant's better than his one. His one in Gestalt is just he looks. I don't know. It's not bad, but they give him better features in like Replicant. And Gestalt, he just kind of looks like just like a shadowy figure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, geez, in this one, I was like, I want to play as him.
yeah, he looks cool.
He looks fucking badass. And during all the scuffling, yeah, he takes Yona away, and you end up locking that evil shade in like the basement. I don't know what they called it. Something I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the basement.
And the only way to keep it there is to seal our friend Kaine in place and turn her basically to stone.
Yeah.
And what a way to end like the first part of the game is she's in stone.
Oh, dude, Yona gets captured. Emil has petrified Kaine to stone. Nier gets fucking stabbed. Shit's fucked.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really intense part of the game. I was like, it's like balls to the wall action. It's awesome. So, loved it. And then 5 years pass. Now's when I want to talk about Emil. Emil's story picks up here. He starts off as just a boy. He's kind of whiny. To me, he's always kind of whiny, but
well,
he's not my favorite character.
He's a kid technically.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm personally not the biggest fan of Emil, but I know people like him, so I won't be mean. But let's talk about his transformation here. We find him. We go back to the mansion, and turns out there's a lot of secrets about this mansion. Care to elaborate and tell us the story about Emil and his big transformation?
Okay, so we find out that under the mansion, which also I think is a clever nod to Resident Evil, under the mansion,
Right.
there's this giant lab. And you end up, going down there with Emil to try to find the thing that'll heal his eyes. When you get down there, you realize there's much more. There's like hospital beds and all this other stuff happening and stuff, and it really raises a lot of questions. Turns out Emil is like 100 something. He's crazy old. Yeah, he's stuck in the form of a child, but Emil is super old. Emil and his sister were once they were being turned into weapons by this organization to battle the red-eyed creatures. Not really practical means. I mean, they're experimenting on kids basically. His sister got turned into this really uncontrollable weapon, and Emil was given the power to petrify it to stop it in its place, and that's sort of like where that comes into play. So when you get down to the lab, you find out that the weapon, is still down there. And so that's kind of where that picks up.
I love that it turns into like a Diablo style action
Oh,
game.
yeah.
I actually thought the gameplay was solid. Like
Yeah,
that's
it's
where I
fun.
got my big combos, is down there. I think I got like a 100. I know I at least got a 100, but I might have even gotten like a 200 hit combo down there, which was I never got close to duplicating that.
I think it works so well because you can see all around you. So not only is melee feasible, but also using magic, you can kind of shoot it in whatever direction and stuff.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, I was like, I wouldn't mind if there were more of these segments. It was kind of fun. And I think there were, but just in that weird dream book. But Emil ends up going through a transformation when you battle his sister. And can you tell me exactly why he had to transform like that?
I'm not entirely clear how the transformation takes place. I know it has something to do with the fact that his sister, like something to do with like they didn't remove her heart from the experiment, so like that's what caused her to go fucking nuts, and that's why she had to be sealed away. But for some reason, whenever you defeat her, you I guess you kind of set her free. Her soul, or whatever you want to say. You kind of put her out of her misery.
Mm-hmm.
But after you do that, she swallows up Emil, and Emil turns into a miniature version of whatever the fuck she was.
Which, of course, is that creepy, deformed, like, it's not really a skull, but it's almost like a cross between a skull and a moon. It becomes his head.
If I had to guess, because like the whole concept of like why this apocalypse even happened was the fact that like magic was introduced to a world that doesn't know magic. So if I had to guess why this transformation, it probably would have to tie in with something to do with magic. I don't know.
Yeah. it hits the problem that a lot of things do, but it doesn't do it as often. So I almost forgive it. But if it doesn't make sense, it's just magic.
Yeah.
And it's definitely my favorite thing about Amir. I'm not a huge fan because I don't really follow it, but whenever I can find it, I really like it as body horror. One of my favorite movies is The Fly, the 80s version. So in seeing somebody turn into something deformed and creepy, there's like a weird piece of me that really enjoys stuff like
Well,
that.
and I think it's perfect for the character of Emil, especially for a Yoko Taro game, which they're very dark. Because Emil is the happiest,
Yeah.
like most go-lucky kind of character. Like he loves his friends and he wants everything to be happy and turn out great. And he's this skeleton thing now.
Yeah. Yeah, he's pretty horrifying. But he doesn't it when you see it on the cover of like the game, like when you see promotional art or something and you see that weird skeletal creature, you kind of assume the worst. But when you're playing it and you're kind of hanging out with him, he didn't change anything about himself.
Yeah,
He's
which
yeah.
I love that. I mean, he basically like became the mascot of the franchise now. I mean, that's the mask that Yoko Taro wears. He wears Emil's like head,
Yeah.
basically. So yeah, he became like the mascot. So I think the design for that version of like of Emil is awesome. Very out there. I remember seeing him on the cover of the original version, and being like, that guy looks weird.
Yeah, and just kind of knowing his origins is so strange, but it kind of works. Like I don't know why, but just seeing this weird creature but being so kind and having this like high pitched little boy voice. There's something weird about it, but it just works for the game. Maybe it's just because Yoko Taro and he makes it work, but I really enjoyed that.
No, and I love after he transforms. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of games where he would have been like, "Whoa, I'm a skeleton and I got magic now." Emil's fucking horrified.
Yeah.
Emil's like,
oh my god!
Yeah, I mean, which rightfully so.
Like
Yeah, rightfully so. Like he does. He has every right to be upset about that.
There's a nice moment when he saves Kaine from de-petrifies her or whatever, and Kaine just knew it was Emil the whole time.
Oh yeah,
He's
yeah,
like, how'd you know?
moment.
And he's just like, I know you. This is a nice moment.
Well, and we didn't really touch upon it, but whenever you first meet Emil, Kaine is with you, of course, because she's in your party at that point. She just kind of like, gives him a pep talk and tells him, don't be ashamed of your body and all this stuff, and they kind of have like a connection there. So I like the fact that they have a really cool relationship, those two characters.
Yeah, they're actually like buddy friends, which is a stark contrast to Grimoire Weiss.
One of my favorite parts of the narrative at one point, I'm not going to spoil what happens there because we'll talk about it, but at one point Emil's talking about how he likes to go like Kaine and Emil are forced to sleep outside of the village because they're both kind of like horrifying monster things, like Kaine has the power of the shades, which they fear the shades, and Emil looks like this now, so they can't sleep in the village with Nier. So they camp outside, and there's a nice moment where like Emil slips up and mentions the fact that like he likes camping with Kaine and all the stuff that they do and stuff like that. And it's like you get to see like a more human side to Kaine that you don't. She takes more of like almost like a motherly role.
Yeah.
So
they have some tender moments together. So the rest of the game is you, as an adult, from this point forward, and this is an important point, this part where you bring Kaine back, because this would be the repeating part, which we'll talk about in a second. But in this part, you're kind of piecing together those little
seal verses, right? No, that's not what it is. It's the key, whatever it is.
Yeah, the little fragments that all piece together. You first, you go to the library, and
Pablo's like, I think I might know where the Shadow Lord is. Doesn't ever explain it. My favorite moment here is Nier is like, wow, Popola, you don't look like you've aged a bit. And she's like, oh, you. And it's like, oh, okay, that's a sweet moment. And then, within the context of the story, you're like, oh, she didn't age.
Yeah. And so it's you going back to these places that you've been to before, these towns, and you doing something a little different, but getting these pieces. So it's just like a do the five orbs or the five special things, and you can do them in semi creative orders, but nothing too crazy. It's you can pick one or the other and just kind of go. And you would do they each have a big moment, and it would be the Lost Shrine where you fight Hansel and Gretel, or the big shrine thing, whatever. The factory. What's that guy's name with the robot with the shade friend?
The kid or the robot?
The whole boss fight is.
I think the robot's name's Beepy.
Oh, he's got like a long name, huh?
Yeah, but he just called himself Beepy, which I like calling him Beepy.
You have I don't think in this version, because I think in the original version you got one at the Airy, but I don't think you get one at the Airy in this one.
You don't fight Wendy?
No, you do, but I don't think you get it because they added the extra piece.
Oh yeah.
In this one they added an extra piece, which is by the seaside shore, and that is a very. Let's talk about that. Did you end up playing through that?
That threw me off. I did not know that was cut from the original release.
Okay, so was that cut or was that added?
That's cut from the US release.
Okay.
That was only in the Japanese version of Replicant.
Oh, okay. From the interviews I read, I got that it was added.
I don't know. I you know what? I could be wrong. I haven't played that version, so
okay. So it's definitely different for America, though.
Yeah. From my understanding, I believe it was cut from the original release and then added back in for this version.
Okay. Maybe that's the case. Man, what an interesting piece. Let's talk about it because I can clip that. This would be by the seaside town. You do a couple little quests, yada yada. This guy's missing again. He's always arguing with his girlfriend.
The red bag guy.
Turns out this time he's actually dead because he's inside of you do like a whole boat segment where it's like a pirate ship or really it's a slave ship washed ashore, and there's a demon like a shade inside of it. It's in the shape of a little girl, and a guy befriends it and starts feeding it, and they actually develop a relationship, not like a gross one, like a father-daughter relationship.
But I think that's why it was cut from the at least from the American stuff originally, is because there is sort of like I don't know, like whenever
I didn't get that.
Well, there's a line I think towards the while you're fighting it towards the end where the guy who's befriended it says something along the lines of like "I will never be with you" or something like that, because he realizes that there's this big monstrosity. I don't know. I think there's touches of like being a little uncomfortable. I don't think anything was outright said, and nobody's ever said in interviews like, "Oh yeah, he's a pedophile." But I think it could have been taken the wrong way, which I think maybe could have been why.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see how it could be misconstrued. I thought maybe it would have been cut because of the period stuff.
That stuff, yes. That I forgot. I blocked that out of my memory. No, dude, I think I texted you when I was playing that. And I was like, I don't remember. It's like I don't remember this part at all. I was like, I think this is new. And then
immediately followed by, I see why they cut it.
I got to the period. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. I get it now.
He's helping her out with her period, which is interesting because again, it's a shade. And then this turns into one of the bigger boss fights of the entire game that you'd actually normally lose. I think in my future playthroughs, like once I've done it a couple times, I actually managed to like literally beat it.
You lost.
Well, you don't. You like. It's weird because it's not like a failure thing. It's like you don't necessarily beat it, and then the guy kind of like brings him in, and he like I'll kill him first or something like that, and
oh yeah,
they go for that.
I'm just talking about now. I'm just talking about.
But later when you're stronger or whatever, you actually like beat the shit out of it and then climb it. And then fight the girl on top, which is
that's awesome.
Which is really neat. Like it's really so that and so it becomes a pretty striking moment, and it actually turns into a side scroller on top of it, which is neat. Yeah,
that's cool.
So it's it's definitely one of the weirder moments, but it's interesting. So if you haven't if you've only played the original, then give this one a shot. It's got a whole new dungeon.
Yeah, threw me the fuck off, dude. I was just like, I got to that mission and I was just like, I don't remember this mission at all, but okay, whatever. And I got to the ship and I was like, yeah, this wasn't in the original version.
Yeah. And then there's the one in the Forest of Myth, which you again replaying that for the endings. The only thing, it was the same story every time that I did those endings. The only thing that changed was some of the numbers, so you had to pay attention to the numbers. Oh, whatever. I'll take it.
Yeah, having to replay that, I can see it be a little annoying.
It's mostly just me pressing X and just looking for the number. I'm like, oh, okay, 23. Okay, cool. Just make sure to remember that. And then brown eyes. Okay, cool. Okay, you ready to talk about the ending of Nier?
Is there anything else? I do want to touch upon the thing with the Airy. I think it is kind of a fun moment. Not fun moment, but it is a cool moment.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So the Airy, you want to explain like what's happening there?
Yeah. So they get a memo that there are people that are actually setting up shop at the Airy. And you're like, well, that's weird because they're always inside. They never come out. And you're like, yeah, it is kind of odd. And Kaine's like, I don't see how that's possible. And so you guys journey over there. And then it turns out there's a bunch of shades that are there it seems like they're trying to coax people out or trying to trick everybody. And so you go through killing them. And it turns out that a lot of the people are shades. And there's like you don't know who's who. But Kaine seems to. And is able to kill people, and they're like, "You killed my sisters!" Like it's a shade. And they're like, "I don't care. You're evil." And it kind of plays with like, "Who's the bad guy here?" And you're like, "Of course I'm the good guy. You're crazy." And then you end up fighting her name. His name is Wendy, the big eye, this giant eye who's. It's funny that was a fight that was important to me because not much for the story reasons, but specifically because I didn't really equip my magic correctly. I never actually upgraded the magic, so it was still like 3% damage increase, and I think I had up to like 20%, and I was doing it way wrong. And so I actually like took that moment to be like, okay, let me figure out all the magic, and I replayed it and got it right. But at least one of the more memorable scenes of you destroying the Wendy with the power of Emil.
Yeah, Emil finally uses his full power and kind of goes berserk and ends up destroying the entire village in the process. That's one of my favorite moments afterwards is whenever you're all just kind of sitting on like the cliffside looking out at where the city used to be, and Emil's just like, holy shit, I killed a ton of people.
And then the fucking crazy psychopathic thing that Nier says.
Yeah.
But you saved us.
You saved us. Yeah, and there's hints of stuff like that throughout the game. There's moments where, like the moment where you find out that Kaine and Emil can't stay in the village anymore. Nier talks about how he had a dream where he strangled Popola. And there's just stuff like that where it's like, Nier's not all there.
Yeah, he's a fucked up little kid.
Yeah.
I was like, is anybody else reading this? Where he's just like, you saved us. I'm like, but you killed like hundreds of people.
Yeah, you killed an entire village.
Wiped them off the face of the earth. It'd be like, it would be like if like Phoenix or where I live or whatever just didn't exist anymore. And you were just like, well, but you saved 3 people.
Yeah, 3 people are all right, so I think we're good.
Yeah. I do want to talk about these different bosses, but I want to talk about them in the next ending for reasons. Let's talk about the first ending. So you get all the pieces, you figure out where they are. Popo's like, oh yeah, they're over there, the place you knew they would be anyway. Yeah. And so you're like, okay, cool. And you travel back up to the, what's it called again? The Lost Sanctum or something? Or
the Lost Shrine.
Lost Shrine, there it is. And you travel up there, more little fights, yada, yada, yada. And then you make it through the first part where you needed the puzzle pieces. You do a little riddle, which actually tells you a little bit more about what's going on, and the fact that I like the fact that Grimoire Vice has to answer those questions because it's a great little nod to the what's going to happen. And who's blocking you but Popola and Devila,
Yeah.
the people you thought were your friends the whole time.
Yeah, and they're just like, "Can you like go home?" You're like, "What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?"
What you talking about? They stand in your way. You fight them a little bit. They're clearly mages or some kind of wizards or something. And wait, I'm trying to remember the order of everything that happened. Do you fight the big bull thing after and then fight them again later? Is that the right order? Okay.
Yeah, because after you fight them the first time, you go to the ballroom.
Yeah.
And then after the ball, you fight the big boar, and then you get the other boar. And
Yeah, great little moment with the boar fight where your friends from Facade come in and help you out, and that's a great.
Prince, the prince kid.
Curious how they got there, but I'll leave that up to Magic. And we'll move on. It was just a nice moment. If the more you look at it, it's just forget it. Don't worry about it. And then they die for you to keep going, which is kind of cool. And then you, Kaine and Emil, press on and fight them for real. And this is where you learn most of the interesting backstory to the game that at least the game is willing to tell you. And it's the big twist that you guys are replicants, which is actually in the name of the whatever. But you guys are shells of humans, and the shades are humans, like what's left of humanity, just roaming around and waiting to get back into the shells. And it's ironic that you guys somehow managed to develop human sentience and are just fully functioning without them now. So
yeah. So I don't know how much of the story you want to explain right now. Do you want to go ahead?
As much as you can.
So Devila and Popola are called observers. They're basically like these machines that are meant to just make sure everything goes smoothly, and the Gestalts and the replicants get to come back together and form humanity at some point. And shit's gone awry, so that's not happening. The Black Scroll is actually a disease from Gestalt's trying to merge with the replicants, and it's not working properly now for some reason, and that has to do with the replicants gaining their own sentience. So that's what that. Yeah, basically, it's been too long. Things aren't working anymore, and that's not going to happen at this point. So yeah, that's sort of where the world is now, and it is interesting to get that perspective because. I mean, you've been killing these things the entire game.
Yeah, and there's when you kill the little, and I remember this, and it was true. I didn't not know it, but it hit harder when I was watching that Clemps video, and he's like, yeah, when you're killing the shades out in the wilderness, they'll just drop books, like school books.
Yeah, and the small ones don't try to hurt you either.
Yeah.
So you're killing kids.
Yeah, it's it turns the whole thing on its head, which is again opposite of Kingdom Hearts.
I think one of the most interesting things, which is in the Japanese book for this game, is that there's a story which is why I think Young Nier works better than Papa Nier, because I don't think this would work with Papa Nier. There's a story where 15-year-old Young Nier is trying to do whatever he can to help his sister and make money, and he ends up selling his body to a man in Seaside. Gets molested and stuff. There's later on a group of villagers are sent out to hunt a group of shades, and whenever Nier goes out, that man is part of the group, and Nier ends up killing that man in the process. And he notes that killing that man feels eerily similar to killing shades.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I think is a fun little bit of story.
Interesting. Okay.
Which again, I think that there's no way that would work with Papa Nier. There's no way Papa Nier would let a man in Seaside molest him. He's a big buff guy dude. He would fucking stab him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there you go. This is the big twist that kind of shifts the perspective of what you've been doing throughout the game, and will sort of inform the rest of the playthroughs that you do, because this game is heavily suggestive that you do multiple endings, do the multiple endings of it. So
What? How was that first, like, whenever you first got to this first ending and you realized the context of what's actually happening? Like, how did that like what was that like for you?
it's pretty mind blowing. I think half of me already knew that I wasn't a human, because again it's called Nier Replicant, and as like a fan of
Yeah, the title kind of
fan of
spoiled it.
fan of, what's the damn movie? I'm a big fan of it. Blade Runner. As a fan of Blade Runner, it's kind of a given. But I did not know that the shades were specifically the humans. So it was like, whoa. Part of me immediately, before they quickly told me that wasn't the case, part of me thought that their visuals were just impaired. Like the replicants' visuals were impaired. And that they weren't black. They just, to us, looked black, and were actually just humans that were walking around. So I thought that'd be cool, and then it turns out it wasn't. It's just like, it's like a weird magic thing, or they're like, their souls.
It's basically like their souls.
Yeah, which is still cool. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And then it makes you think about all the bosses that you fight and what their stories might be, which obviously we'll talk about in the endings. But no, that was crazy, and it really makes you think about the actions that you've taken to get this far, and the game's like constant reinforcing that shades all need to be killed. Like, all the shades, we need to kill them all, and yada yada. And just the insistence that the enemy is the shades, because the game, you don't even think about it, because we're so used to, like, with video games, we're like, these are the bad guys. So
monsters.
Yeah. You're kind of, you don't think about it when the game's like, these are the bad guys, because we're so ingrained with it. But it does emphasize how you think that they're the bad guys throughout the game, and it's just kind of it's a funny perspective thing. And you told me, you thought perspective is the name of the game here. What did you think when you first hit this?
It's a game. It's a game about perspective, dude. The first time I had no fucking clue. And the first time, again, Replicant's not even in the title. It's just called Nier. I had no clue. I was like, how did this, like, how are you alive? And there's the version of you in the past and the version of you in the future and all that stuff. I knew something was happening. I did not understand the full context of what was happening until that moment. And then I sort of, like, after I beat the first ending, I had to go back and read up on it. And then, of course, I played the other endings. But I was just like, my mind was fucking blown. I was just like, whoa. I was like, I mean, the game, I played other games where it's like, oh, you're actually not a good guy. And also, this game is like, no, you're the bad guy of the game.
I don't know. Do you see it that way?
Sorta, in a sense, especially with the first ending. You sort of doom humanity.
And that's one thing that Yoko Taro talked about, is he doesn't want you to have a specific way to view it. So I guess,
again, like I said, I would call it a game of perspective.
Yeah.
In the perspective of the character of Nier, he's doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he's setting out to be inherently evil.
Right. Yeah, I don't see him, and I guess let's keep this discussion going, because this is kind of the crux of the game. But the ending is you do find the Shadow Lord, and you battle him and kill him.
Yeah.
And,
well, there's a few moments before that where, like, Emil gives his life.
Yeah.
To save you guys, and then Vice starts losing his powers. So it's basically just gonna be you and Kaine.
Yeah. The characters, things happen. Yeah, but you fight the Shadow Lord, and you kill him. Well, you don't kill him, but you beat him. To get the cutscene going, and then the Yona that has been actually transferred into a human. Like, it's actually happened now. Like, the one time they got it to work, she's like, oh, the other Yona is, calling out for you, and she loves you, and this isn't right. We're, like, stealing it. So she just drops it, goes in the sunlight, it's over, and it's back to being just the replicant Yona, the shell.
Yeah,
Which
they have souls now in a sense, you know.
Yeah, so with that in mind, you think that Nier is the bad guy?
Yeah. So what happens basically, which I don't know the full logistics of this. Again, there's a lot of backstory to this game. Stuff you can read up on. Basically, with the Shadow Lord is sort of in control of a lot of what's happening, and basically with wiping him out after you kill him, you like finish him off. There's no possible way that the humans, the replicants and the Gestalts can come back together. Like, you basically doomed everybody.
Yeah. Well, because
So-
I think it's because yeah. You have to read up on it, but that's essentially the crux of it. It gets very complicated. But yeah, that was the last chance for humanity to piece itself back together, and you kind of end it. I think about that. That's a careful observation of. So you're the bad guy, but I don't know. It's hard to say, because the humans don't set themselves up as being that great either.
That's true.
Set up. I mean, look at Emil's story.
Again, I think it's all just about the circumstance. I think, and again, it's also just about perspective. I think in the grand scheme of things, you're the bad guy. I think that's the point in like the Nier history where they would look and be like, that guy fucked us. But in terms of just Nier himself, I totally understand the drive and why he wanted to, why he did what he did.
Yeah, well, Nier. Let's be also clear that Nier also would have ended the shell's history as well, the replicant's history, because they require the body of the human to exist, and those won't exist anymore. They'll all die out, so the replicants will. But again, I mean, his view of Tokotaro specifically, his view of living creatures just seems so cruel. It's hard to imagine that ending it would be the villain thing to do. You know what I'm saying?
If you exist in a Yoko Taro game, you're fucked anyway, dude. Like I said, and it's sort of the same thing in the first Drakengard. Like I said, it's like a Dynasty Warriors type hack and slash for part of the game, then like a flight game for part of the game. In that game, you're also not like the hack and slash isn't fun, and it's not supposed to be fun because killing people isn't supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
That's sort of the point. So yeah, he's always had like a backwards view of this kind of stuff. That's kind of like it's like almost anti-game design.
Yeah. I guess this whole thing kind of ties into the extra endings of this game. The second ending. So you're when you start over, you're starting over as at the point that I mentioned earlier.
Like time skip, yeah.
Where you time skipped and you've rescued Kaine. So Emil is freaky monster still, and Kaine is back, and you have to fight that boss again. But now you're like level 30 something and overpowered, and it's not very difficult. But now the main difference with this playthrough, really the main difference is that when you're fighting the shades, you get to understand them a little bit more, especially the bosses of this part. You get to understand that the boss at the junk heap was like a kid that was separated from his mom, and became friends with a robot. And they kind of taught each other stuff, and he taught him how to be human, and the robot taught him about the world. And he was just protecting the kid, and you end up killing him. And the it's hard to say it because now the secret's out. But I guess the replicants that were accusing the replicant that was accusing the robot was mad because he thought that he killed his brother, but he actually had nothing to do with the death of his brother. It was just an accident. And so you kind of change the perspective. So there, clearly, you're the villain there.
Yeah,
I guess
that one definitely.
that one. But each one has its own little unique story that of what's really going
Well,
on there in the backstory.
I really like the one at Facade because there's this pack of wolves led by a shade wolf.
Yeah.
That originally it's seen as like they're attacking the village. You kind of come to find out that they're not. They wanted to live in peace, and the village attacked them out of fear, I guess. And whenever you killed the main shade wolf, he's just kind of like what have we done to deserve this? You know, like what?
Yeah.
You know, like
That was
you know,
really
and
depressing.
yeah, yeah, it's like holy shit, like that's whoa, you know, and adding the subtitles and stuff and like the extra dialogue to the shades, fuck, it makes it so much more impactful when you play through the second time, and you're just like whoa. Whoa! It's like when you fight, what's his name, Gretel, I think it is. Whenever you just go back to the Lost Shrine for the second time,
Yeah, yeah.
and he has there's some smaller shades with him, and you're just like, if you the first time, you're like, oh, they're just little enemies you have to fight. No, they're kids that he befriended, and whenever you're fighting him, he's like, don't touch them, don't hurt them.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing shifts perspective on that, and it makes it super interesting. The other difference is that you get Kaine talking to Tyran. Before,
Yeah.
Tyran wasn't... I mean, it was like obviously, you knew that she was part Shade, but now you get to understand the Shade part and get little cutscenes where she's actually talking to Tyran. He's a little edgelord for my taste.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He's definitely an edgelord.
But there were moments where he was actually emotional, which is kind of funny. It's kind of different. That's the main thing for the second playthrough. At the end, I'm trying to think about how that one, because I know what the third and fourth endings are.
Well, you know, you find out that Emil survived.
Yes,
He's just ahead.
he's just bouncing around.
I love it. He actually does show up in Automata.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a major player in the story, but I will tell you this: he runs a shop.
Okay.
Yeah, he has like a mobile truck thing that his head is on, and he drives around, and it's so fucking hilarious in that game. Whenever because that game's another one, you know, it's another game about like morality, and it's like really depressing and stuff. But whenever you hear, you know, you like. His thing plays music whenever he's like nearby, and he goes, and then like Emil's like, "Come buy my stuff, come buy," and you're like, it's so fucking funny because it's like this desolate wasteland, and you just hear like this fucking happy ass music playing.
That's awesome.
I absolutely love whenever I was playing Automata, and I was just like, because I didn't know how they were going to tie the two games together, or if they even were. Whenever I first heard and saw him, I was like, "Holy shit! There he is!"
That's awesome. So whatever. I don't necessarily remember what happened at the end of, but it was pretty much the same. But endings, I almost said season. Episodes or replay 3 and 4 are the ones where you have to make a decision with Kaine.
Which in the original version, these were the last two endings.
Gotcha. Okay. So the first and again, I mean, if you didn't know, maybe I'll just put a big thing that says spoilers on this. So there you go. So you have two options. The first one is that you can. So Kaine flips out. Now, this is the part where Kaine and Tyran's taken over and Kaine's freaking out. But you have to fight her, and then he says, "I'll give you the ability to save her." And you do beat her, and you go, "Okay, you have two options on how to save her. Either you can kill her right now and put her out of her misery, or you can end your own life, and you'll never have existed, and the world will continue without you." Which is an interesting proposition. I actually went with the I'll end my existence option. And then, well, no, hold on though. Because I went with that, and then it was like, "Are you sure everything will be deleted?" And I said, "Oh, no, I don't want that." So I hit no, thinking that I would get the option to pick again, and maybe I could look up, like, should I do this or not? Nope. As soon as I hit no, it didn't take me back to another menu. It was like, okay, I'll kill her, and then you just stab her,
Uh,
and then it's like I was like, oh, okay, whoops. Well, there's that ending, and so that immediately got me ending C, and then you have to replay the whole thing again, and then you do the you get actually ending D where you'd say yes, 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 just end it, go ahead, end me, and that's where the one of the more original endings comes up, where all of your stuff gets deleted, and not it doesn't just like delete. There's like it actually shows every page of your stuff like erasing itself.
you never existed. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it goes away, and then you get this unique ending where Kaine's like, I'm like almost like I miss somebody, but I don't know who or what or whatever, and she's kind of crying, and then she and Yona just like kind of she takes your place and just becomes the new you, and just look out at the sun, I guess. Okay, you tell me, because this was your ending, like this was your like final ending of the game. So you tell me, what's the impact of this?
Holy shit. The first time I ever played that ending, it was like, do you want to save her? And I was like, yeah, sure. And it was just like, okay, delete everything. I was like, oh, okay. And it was just, I watched it all slowly get erased. And then, I didn't really understand the full context. I was just like, oh, this is weird. And then, they played that cutscene and stuff. And then you go back to the title screen and there's no more, your save's gone, but there's just a flower on the title screen. There's like, a lunar tear. And I was just like, I don't know why, but that was like such a beautiful moment to me. Like,
Yeah.
I've never seen a game do that. It's just like,
well, it's permanent.
I was like, holy shit. Like, I gave all the stuff I just did, all the work, everything I went through, like I gave it all up just to, save this person, I was like, whoa.
That you'll never see again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, whoa. And I think that's like the perfect final ending for the game, in a sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes up for, granted, again, it's perspective. He didn't know he was doing bad, but I don't know if it makes up for all the bad stuff you've done through the game, but it definitely helps.
Well, you still ended the world in that scenario.
Yeah.
It's just you're not there anymore.
But you're not you're not selfless. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, you did still make that comment about, killing all the area, and at least you saved us.
Psycho. I want to juxtapose that to the ending E.
Okay, and you're going to have to talk about this. I know what ending E is, but I know it in the context of the story. I haven't played through Replicant all the way yet. I haven't experienced the added version of ending E.
Okay, so you start over, and you basically start over from the beginning. Different name. Like we say his name is Nier, but you get to name your character. You cannot name him the same thing you named him before. You change the name, and you play up into the part where you actually defeat Hook.
Okay.
And at that point, Kaine gets knocked out, and this happens in the original too. And then you like in the most anime thing ever, you reach for her, and she reaches back for you. Only this time she misses, and she drops out, and then she wakes up, and it's after the events of ending D, and she's like, "Oh, that was a crazy dream. Like, I wonder who that was." And you just go on about your business. You're like, "Oh, I hate shades. I'm gonna go out and kill some stuff." Go out. You're going to head over to the Forest of Myth. I can't remember why. It's just like, I'll go head over there. Maybe there's like somebody there that you need to talk to. You go there, and then the tree starts spewing robots out of it.
Oh.
And so you start fighting that and realize that the tree, like you said, was a big supercomputer. You go inside of it, and you fight a bunch of replicas of yourself, of Kaine. And it seems overwhelming, and then Emil comes and saves the day. He comes back and helps you. So it's a little nod to the ending B. Although Emil, it's him, but he actually has like 4 arms.
Ooh.
Like he looks similar but slightly different. And then the game basically turns into what I assume is very close to Nier Automata, where it's just got that style. It's much more blocky and has a lot more fast-paced shooter segments in it, dodging stuff, and it just, from what I've read and understand, it just seems a lot more like that. Like the gameplay is closer to that. And then you fight your way through. It turns out the whole thing is talking about your computer and that there's, memories that don't get erased. Like they've been erased in the world, but they're permanently stored in there. Of course, you restore it through violence, as you do in everything. And the game ends with you inside of a lunar tier holding what looks like Nier, although from what I've read, it's like it's like the computer's reimagining of him, and he's naked, and you're kind of holding him as like a little kid. And then Emil flies in, and then it zooms out, and it's just this giant lunar tier that you're sitting on in the world. And that's it.
Yeah, it's a little different than the original ending E that he wrote about. But I'm excited to get to experience that because, again, it's an added gameplay segment and bit that wasn't in the original version. So I don't know how much it adds to the story. I feel like the ending D is powerful enough to just be the ending.
Yeah. Well, I read a good article about it, and I'm not big on video game theory so much because I'm kind of an ape. But I was reading it, and I was just he went into a lot of detail about how he thinks it's detrimental, ending E. Like it's like because the ending D is so powerful because of how permanent it is, and it basically undoes all that. Because once you beat ending E, you get all your stuff back.
Oh,
and you get to start over I can't remember at which point, but you're back to being
that. Okay, I don't really like that.
Back to being Nier, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you get all your stuff back.
Yeah, and I think you get Kaine's weapon as a.
That's sort of like the thing is like it's the sacrifice.
Right, it takes that all kind of away. I mean, you could argue both ways because it's like, well, I did do it. I experienced the sacrifice, and then it got to this other. But I don't know. There's two stories on that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm still not mad it's here. I mean, again, it's just an optional ending. I believe the only endings that really matter are A and B in context of the story. I think I could be wrong on that. Again, multiple ending games are weird.
A and which one? A and what?
B. And I know B has to be canonical in some sense, but I'm not sure beyond that which ones are. I mean, honestly, they aren't. They could build off each other in a way. So I don't know.
Do you know which one Automata is based off of?
No.
Oh, okay.
And I don't really think you need to know because again, they touch elements from the first game, but you could play Automata by itself and also be fine.
Okay.
Because that's just the kind of way. That seems to be a way that Yoko Taro writes his games. Is that he doesn't do direct sequels, really.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like we're gonna have the Nier is back for another wacky adventure. Whoa!
The Shades are back. I thought I ended those guys.
Yeah, Shades are coming back, and we gotta stop them. So yeah, I mean, do you have anything else you want to touch upon before we wrap up?
Well, I want to talk about the legacy, and then we'll do final thoughts.
Okay.
There's not much legacy to Nier except for the fact that it was a cult classic, and I mean, Nier Automata wouldn't be here if not for that. I'm actually surprised Nier Automata's here at all. Anyway, but there you go.
That's weird. I know, dude. I was shocked when I heard it. I was over the fucking moon, dude. I was when I first I forgot when it was. It's like 2015, 2014, something like that. Whenever they first announced they're working on another Nier game, and I was just like, oh.
You touched on it a little bit. Do you think Square Enix abandoned this? Like they were like, this is bad, and we're gonna not touch on this for a while?
No, I don't. Yeah, honestly, I think because once again, if you look back at least the American marketing, all the trailers are like the next big story from Square Enix, and it's like trying to sell you on Nier, which I think is the wrong route to sell this game. And then it didn't do as well as I think they hoped. And then I don't know because Yoko Taro games were never that successful. I mean, the Drakengard series was never their biggest series either. So I don't know. I have a feeling that's why they sat on it for a bit. And I mean, and it's just like crazy to me that Automata did as well as it did, given Yokotara's history.
Yeah.
Because again, his games have never done particularly great. You know, um,
I think his time is
so
coming up.
yeah, I think. Well, I think now we're more was especially an American audience. We're more open to having these sort of different narratives and more prolific, creators, and stuff like that. We're I think we're not past it, but we're almost to a point to where we're past that like pandering marketing side of things for the most part. We're like, Assassin's Creed 8 is coming out and Call of Duty 15, and we still have pandering and marketing, but there's a lot of recognition for games that try to be different and try to push the boundaries.
Yeah, I agree. It's. I think Nier just came out at the wrong time.
Mm.
This is a bad timing on that one.
Dude, I bought it in 2010. Not at release, but I bought it secondhand for like $20. Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was at. There's like a. I don't call it like a thrift store. It's like a. How don't you call it? Like a thrift mall. It's like a little thing where you can go in and people set up booths and stuff like that. Like almost like a little flea market type thing. And one of the sellers there, I would always go there as a kid because it was like in walking distance of my house, and I was a teenager. I didn't really have a car or anything. I just walked places. So I would walk over there constantly and buy games from this guy's booth, and he would always put stuff out. And, I'd be like, oh, cool, this PS2 game I've never heard. This kind of stuff. He always had really interesting stuff, and that's where I got Nier. So I was just like, I had Xbox 360 and I was looking for stuff to play, and I went over there and I was like, I never heard of Nier, and I was like, it looks cool. So I picked it up and fucking fell in love with
it. We didn't talk about it much, and I don't know if there's much to say other than it's great. But do you know anything specifically interesting about the soundtrack to this game?
No,
because it's like, wow.
I mean,
I know
it's all like a made up language, and the lady, I don't know her name, but the lady that does the vocal, she's fantastic. I mean, this is like, honestly, in my opinion, this is like one of the best gaming soundtracks. Like it's fucking beautiful.
It's a gorgeous soundtrack. That's one of the things that was most striking. I'm still humming songs from it now in my head, just.
But she'll be excited. She returned for Automata. There's great music in that game as well.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Yeah. Well, I'm excited for that. Let's do final thoughts. What are your final thoughts on Nier? And you're still technically playing Replicant, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's my favorite RPG, so I don't. I love it. It's a great game. It's everything I personally look for, not only in games but in my media. I look for things that subvert your expectations, that try to push the boundaries, that try to have a more different narrative. I kind of get bored with games where you're just a hero and things are all just the same, and it's the same schlock over and over again. I tend to lean towards things, and that's probably just me being of a more creative background. Is I tend to lean towards things that try to raise questions and try to be different, and this really fits that mold for me. And I mean, that's why it's my favorite RPG.
Interesting. Yeah, no, it's a really, really good game. Kind of out of nowhere, especially back then. Wow, I can't believe this would ever be released in that time frame. It just seems a gaming critical success. Marketing nightmare, release disaster. I'm not sure exactly how that happened. It's just bizarre that could happen at that time. My only complaint really from the game was the multiple endings. I liked doing ending B. By the time I got to D, I was very exhausted with this game. And I understand that it's optional, so I don't really hold it against it. But the whole point in going into it was, from what I read from everything, was to play the multiple endings.
You'll appreciate the way Automata tackles the endings.
Okay.
Because the way Automata does it, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but the way it does it is that you'll play through up to a point, get an ending, credits will roll, and but you just keep going.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't restart. You pick up from that point, and it may be from a different character's perspective, and maybe from the same character's perspective, but you just keep going.
Wow.
And that's the way that game builds on its endings. Is that you know, it's never like this game. You never have to just replay the same parts over and over again. It's always changing it up and always keeping it fresh.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So that game
I would appreciate
fix the issues. Yeah.
Yeah, I would super appreciate that. So I'm excited to do that because honestly, with the endings, all you have to do is tweak something a little bit, and I would have been okay with it. Because you see a surprise, and you're like, oh, nice, because you're kind of blowing through the game at that point. I think I had like 4-hour playthroughs or something of me just getting through those. And it was just like annoying. Okay, I got to do this part. Oh my God, Emil, you destroyed the town. Okay, let's move on to the next part. That part was just annoying, but I mean, the endings are worth it, especially ending D, and then, I mean, I guess ending E was certainly different. But other than that, like, I was blown away by this game and how I mean, I can't recommend it enough if you haven't, especially if you played like Automata and are like not sure if you want to do this. Like, you should fucking do it.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Well, and I'm sure. I mean, you've heard me plenty of times with the button mappers before you played this mention it's my favorite RPG. So, like, can you see why?
Oh yeah, from your perspective too. This is an Alex game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's a phenomenal game, and I wish that I was gaming at this time just so I could have played this at that time. It sucks that I wasn't because of the other crap that was out. That's why I stopped gaming around now.
And there's aspects we didn't touch upon in this video. There's this podcast. There's stuff we didn't touch upon. We didn't touch upon the fact that like Emil is gay. That's something that's a plot point that isn't really brought up. That's
but don't you think ironically you bringing it up is counter to what Yoko was aiming for?
Exactly. I'm just saying I'm leading into the fact that I'm saying that if you want to understand a little more of the narrative, maybe you don't want to play the game, maybe you do want to play the game, you just didn't understand. We mentioned it. I would definitely just say check out Clems's series on Nier.
Yeah, absolutely.
His videos are fantastic. They're really well done. He touches upon that stuff. He's also pretty funny too. Yeah. So
yeah, he was good.
I would say if you want more Nier and you don't want to play it, or you have played it and you don't fucking understand what's happening.
Yeah, he gave me a really good, and I'm sure if I watched it more, like give you a couple more playthroughs or listen throughs, I would understand it even more. But I got a really good sense of what was going on here, which is impressive considering the breadth of the narrative of this game. So
yeah, he's covered everything basically Yoko Taro related.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Get all of it there. He does the Automata?
Yeah, he does Automata. He's done all 3 of the Drakengard games.
I should do the Drakengard 1 or something, just so I understand that.
You should.
I'll definitely won't do Automata. But
you're not going to like playing that one.
Okay, so just watch his thing.
Definitely watch his thing on it. Because the story is interesting. It's a very interesting game. But like I said, you're from a gameplay perspective, Nier actually tries to be fun from a gameplay perspective, and Drakengard does not.
How funny. All right, well, that's it for RPG Archives version of Nier Replicant. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, Alex.
No, dude, I was ecstatic to do Nier, so thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Make sure you check out his channels, Turbo Zone and then Turbo Dojo, the new one. You can become a sensei and learn all the...
I'll make Damon play through Nier.
There you go. Force him to do it.
No, dude, I'm pretty sure I've bought him a copy of Nier, and he's just sitting on it. I bought him like a copy of Nier like 7 years ago. I was like, dude, this game's fantastic. I was like, cool. And then he just hadn't touched it.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate. But what's not unfortunate is we can consider Nier Replicant archived.
Woo!
Woo! Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Can't wait for Automata.